apologize for causing you trouble. I hope you can bear with me for a while.
My sister-in-law got divorced and returned to her parents' house. According to my sister-in-law, the mismatch of values and her husband's terrible emotional abuse were the reasons. Since my husband and I were already living with my in-laws, my sister-in-law bowed her head apologetically to me and my husband. I'd heard that she would find a new job and a place to live soon and move out, so I said, since it's your parents' home, please relax and take a rest. Little did I know that my sister-in-law's return would start to trouble me.
My name is Ariel. I'm a 31-year-old housewife who works part-time. My husband is busy with work and currently on a long business trip in another state.
Originally, we were living in a rented apartment, but due to my mother-in-law's strong request, we started living together at my in-laws' house.
My son goes on frequent business trips, and I worry about Ariel. If we live together, we can save on rent and also have some savings. We're getting older, so it would be reassuring to have you and my son around.
When I heard my mother-in-law's proposal from my husband, I was a little surprised, but I agreed. At that time, we had a good relationship with my in-laws, and above all, it was carefree. It has been 2 years since we started living together, and honestly, I regret it now. At first, I was able to live peacefully with my parents-in-law, but everything changed last year when my sister-in-law, Evie, returned home after her divorce, and my life took a turn.
Ariel, I feel like having pork cutlet for dinner today.
I put down a bag from the supermarket I stopped by on my way back from work and rejected her request.
Well, it's kind of sudden. I'm planning to grill sari tonight, so it's not possible.
My mother-in-law, who had been looking at us from the side, chimed in.
You know that Evie loves pork cutlet, right? As her daughter-in-law, you should consider the family's favorite dishes in the menu.
I'm sorry, I'll be more careful next time.
I replied casually, ignoring my mother-in-law's sarcastic comment. I headed to the kitchen to put away the groceries. The humble attitude my sister-in-law had when she returned after divorce was nowhere to be found. Looking back now, I think she was just pretending to bow her head to me and my husband. And she had always intended to settle in my in-laws' house from the beginning. My mother-in-law, who used to be very kind, is now completely under my sister-in-law's control. They both harass me and treat me like a maid. I do all the housework, and with my part-time job, I'm always exhausted. My sister-in-law not only refuses to do any housework, but also doesn't contribute to the living expenses. She lounges around lazily like a sloth with my mother-in-law, or goes out dressed. I think it would be best to end this living arrangement quickly, but my husband is often on business trips, and we can't have a proper discussion. There is another reason as well.
Welcome home, Ariel. This breeze is cheap. Even it's Sunday, you must be tired from work. I'll put the groceries in the fridge, so take a little break. It's tough to cook dinner alone, so let me help you.
Still thank you so much, Peter.
I'm concerned about my father-in-law. With my husband being frequently absent, it's important to have my kind father-in-law's presence to keep me going. My father-in-law also doted on and raised my sister-in-law with the same affection as my mother-in-law. But he couldn't stand seeing my mother-in-law and sister-in-law mistreating me, so he scolded them firmly. He seemed to have a feeling of, she is my lovely daughter, but mistakes must be corrected. However, every time he did that, my mother-in-law would turn it around and scold him, saying, "Why can't you take the side of your daughter instead of supporting your son's wife? Are you even a real father? You're such a useless husband." If my husband and I were to leave this house, I'm worried that my father-in-law would be mistreated and ridiculed and treated like a maid in my place. Since I sighed heavily in the room we use as our bedroom. It took out my wallet from my bag, counted the number of bills inside, and noted it down in a notebook. Of course, there is a reason for doing this. About a year ago, a while after my sister-in-law returned home, I started noticing that the contents of my wallet were missing occasionally. Money is missing again. It started with a few dollars in loose change and gradually increased in amount. As someone who's particular about money, I believed in my own feeling and started keeping a record. When several hundreds dollars went missing, I became so convinced that I couldn't help but laugh. Someone was indeed taking money from my wallet. Moreover, by the amount and frequency, I could tell how much they were underestimating me. I took measures such as always carrying my wallet. But I was scolded by my sister-in-law, saying it's such a bother to have your wallet with you while doing housework. I don't want to suspect my family, but my sister-in-law seems suspicious. It may sound presumptuous, but my sister-in-law frequently goes out even she doesn't work after her divorce. It's a mystery what she does with the money, I've even discussed it with my husband before, but there is simply no evidence.
I'll definitely gather evidence next time.
The culprit seems to be watching my every move and really shows an opening. After ordeals, I closed the notebook with the records and put on an apron before leaving the room. One day, I was doing the housework that was pushed onto me by my mother-in-law. Thinking of taking a little break, I headed towards the room and I witnessed my sister-in-law opening the door and entering our room. Instantly, thoughts of the money in my wallet crossed my mind. This is a chance to catch her in the act. With determination, I stepped in and in the dimly lit room. My sister-in-law was frozen, clutching my wallet. Moreover, her fingers were inside the wallet. It was decisive evidence.
What are you doing?
Hearing my calm voice, my sister-in-law closed the wallet in a hurry.
What of the persons? It's probably past and snaps. I saw the wallet in the hallway, so I thought of putting it back in your bag for you.
What are you doing with your fingers inside the wallet? If your story is true, there is no need to do that, right?
Sensing that she was being suspected, my sister-in-law forced a smile with a strained expression.
Are you suspecting me? I didn't take any money. You usually only keep around $500 in your wallet. Aren't you being overly self-conscious?
My sister-in-law raised her voice and forcefully put the wallet she was holding into my bag.
There have been times when the contents of my wallet went missing. Please answer honestly. Wasn't it you, Evie, who took it?
Confident that my sister-in-law was the culprit, I asked her directly. Indeed, I always keep around $500 in my wallet, just in case something happened. But I was the only one who knew about that habit.
What's going on?
My mother-in-law, alerted by my sister-in-law's loud voice, peered. My sister-in-law clung to my mother-in-law, as if seizing the opportunity.
MamaDisray.com. Listen, Chael suspects that I stole money from her wallet. She even claims I've done it multiple times.
In response to my sister-in-law's accusation, my mother-in-law stared at me with a frown.
Real, how could you say such things to Evie?
Since Evie came back, money has been repeatedly disappearing from my wallet. Even now, I saw her entering this room without permission and touching the wallet.
My desperate plea had no effect on my mother-in-law, who unquestioningly sided with my sister-in-law. In a moment, a regret flashed through my mind. I should have gathered evidence with my cell phone. I had been too focused on catching her in the act.
Wait, what a horrible daughter-in-law you are. I can't believe you treat Evie as a thief. After all, you're just an outsider.
Besides, Ariel, you're being overly self-conscious. Could it be that you wanted attention by acting like a victim?
Like the word outsider from my mother-in-law hit me hard. It had only been 2 short years of living together, but I thought I had put in effort as my husband's wife and as part of the family. I can't take it anymore. Without saying a word, I left the room, slipped on my sandals, and went outside.
Hey, where are you going without even making dinner?
I could hear my sister-in-law's voice, but I paid no attention. My brisk pace gradually slowed down. It was completely dark, and the wind was chilly. I had left the house, but where was I going exactly? And I was wearing a worn-out apron over my loungewear with sandals on my bare feet. I didn't have my cell phone or wallet either. Lost in thought, I sat on a bench in the park.
Hey, what are you? It's story-free.
My father-in-law in a suit looked down at me with curiosity.
I recognize the apron from a distance since I'm familiar with it. He said,
Hearing that, I felt a little embarrassed. This apron was a gift from my mother-in-law as a thank you for accepting the living arrangement. I accepted the canned coffee my father-in-law offered and expressed my gratitude. At that moment, the emotions I had been holding back overflowed, and I couldn't help but cry. Ever since my sister-in-law returned home, there have been times when some of the money in my wallet was missing. Today, I finally caught her in the act, but my mother-in-law didn't believe me, and both my sister-in-law and mother-in-law hurled abusive words at me. My father-in-law, who had silently listened to everything I said, bowed deeply to me.
My apologies, Ariel, for not being able to stop the disrespectful behavior of my wife and Evie, despite witnessing their usual behavior being excessive. What he said he'd been considering for a while and continued speaking. At this point, what if we stop living together? Trace, you shouldn't have to go through such hardships, and I'm sure my son doesn't want that either.
I was surprised by my father-in-law's proposal. It was a grateful offer, but when I thought about my father-in-law after I'm gone, my conscience still ached.
Anyway, let's go back. I asked Eric. If we buy slightly more expensive bento boxes, both of them will forget to complain.
Seeing me hesitate with my words, my father-in-law smiled, seeing through my heart. As I returned to my parents-in-law's house, together with my father-in-law, as expected, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law approached me complaining. I handed them the bought bento boxes for dinner, and they immediately became cheerful, completely ignoring me. Thanks to my father-in-law's consideration, I went straight back to the room and called my husband to discuss stopping living together and talk about today's events. To stop living together and talk about today's events. 1 week later, the three of us, my mother-in-law, father-in-law, and I were having dinner when we heard the sound of the front door. It seems that my sister-in-law, who had gone out during the day, had returned. But the noise was tremendous. Stomping heavily in the hallway, my sister-in-law, with a fierce expression, appeared. Ivy, come back more quietly. Ignoring my father-in-law's warning, my sister-in-law glared at me, took out a few bills from her own wallet, and slammed them on the table. They were not the familiar $100 bills, but toy bills. Instead of the face of Benjamin Franklin, a mysterious character was depicted in their place.
Today I had a date with someone I met through matchmaking, and it was a huge embarrassment. You were doing matchmaking?
I pretended to be overly surprised, and my sister-in-law blushed. That's none of your business. What exactly do you mean by this? Just in response to her loud voice at close range, I've heard,
You don't need to raise your voice. Says she did take money from my wallet. But since my mother-in-law doesn't believe me, I decided to put toy bills in my wallet as a test. So it was you, Evie, after all.
But how could she not realize they were toy bills before using them outside? Perhaps due to the habit of taking money from my wallet, she didn't bother to check properly. I closed the curtains in the room, so it was dimly lit, which may have caused it too. I don't know who she was on a date with, but the person who would be most surprised is that man. Realizing that she had confessed, due to my pointing it out, my sister-in-law froze. My mother-in-law expressed her astonishment, saying, I can't believe it.
Appreciate, Evie. Wasn't the allowance I gave you not enough? I was even giving you $300 a month from my secret savings. I never thought Ariel's words were true. My father-in-law had originally believed my story, so he looked at my sister-in-law with a bewildered expression.
Yeah, nitwording. But you secretly give so much money to Evie without telling me.
The discovery that my mother-in-law had been giving my sister-in-law a large monthly allowance further amazed my father-in-law, who let out a sigh. My sister-in-law made excuses and presented her theory.
Because if I remarry, I can be a housewife again and live an easy life. Finding a job and living alone are too much of a hassle.
Is there such a reasoning? There are many things I want to point out. But when I think that my money was used for my sister-in-law's matchmaking, I feel like laughing beyond anger. My sister-in-law sends a glance at my mother-in-law, but my mother-in-law averts her eyes. Realizing that she no longer has any allies, my sister-in-law raises her hand and exclaims,
It's just a few $100. To embarrass me twice. I won't forgive you.
I instinctively closed my eyes, but there was no sign of my sister-in-law hitting me. When I opened my eyes, my husband was holding my sister-in-law's arm, stopping her. We were all surprised by my husband's heroic appearance.
Why? Isn't it too early for you to come home?
I finished work earlier than planned.
In response to my question, my husband kindly answered. Then, my husband turned to my mother-in-law and sister-in-law.
I heard everything from Ariel and Dad.
On the day I ran away from my in-laws, I spoke to my husband on the phone. I firmly explained to him the mistreatment I had endured from my mother-in-law and sister-in-law, and that I had reached my limit. My husband apologized deeply to me. My father-in-law also joined in the middle, and we decided to have a discussion using the speaker mode, the three of us together. It was my husband's suggestion to replace the money with toy bills and provoke my sister-in-law into confessing in front of my in-laws. The plan was to prove the truth of my accusations in front of my mother-in-law and punish my sister-in-law with my father-in-law.
Now that we know Ariel's accusations are true, shouldn't Mom and Evie apologize properly?
With my father-in-law's statement and my husband's expression filled with anger, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law mumbled to themselves.
First of all, didn't you promise to decide on a new job and place to live and move here immediately?
My mother-in-law snapped back at my husband's words.
This house is also Evie's home too.
Of course, as long as Ariel doesn't suffer, there would be no problem.
My husband spoke while leaning close to me, placing his hand on my shoulder. Just that gesture gave me courage.
I've also spoken with my father-in-law and husband, and I cannot forgive both Evie and Sandra. Therefore, my husband and I have decided not to live together.
My mother-in-law had a shocked expression, but I said it was you, Sandra, who referred to me as a stranger. Hearing my words, my mother-in-law slumped her shoulders.
Oh, by the way, Mikans, I talked on the phone with Evie's ex-husband after a long time. And apparently, the real reason for their divorce was her embezzlement and severe emotional abuse. He's furious because he didn't claim compensation out of compassion.
This was news to both me and my in-laws, and we all exclaimed, "What?"
Wait, why did you contact him without permission?
It's your fault for lying to us. Your ex-husband said that he would definitely demand compensation from you. Are you...
My sister-in-law's face, which had turned red with anger, now turned pale with fear and trembled. Apparently, my husband had doubts about the reason for her divorce. After hearing my father-in-law's words, he decided to take an action and made a phone call. My sister-in-law now is half crying. Anyway, just to let you know, I have kept a record of the amount of money you took from my wallet. Sir Pauliums, make sure to return it all. My words were the final blow, and my sister-in-law slumped on the ground, completely defeated. 6 months has passed. After my husband and I left my in-laws' house, it seems that my in-laws also kicked out my sister-in-law. According to my father-in-law, my mother-in-law has completely woken up. She now does the housework as if she were a different person. While we didn't completely cut ties, we have decided to keep our distance from my mother-in-law unless necessary. The money my sister-in-law took from my wallet was returned in installments, all from her own earnings. However, my sister-in-law incurred the anger of her ex-husband, who demanded compensation for the emotional abuse during their marriage. She had been telling others that it was her ex-husband's fault for the divorce. So it's her own doing. The other day, I received an apology letter from my mother-in-law. For a moment, memories of the kind mother-in-law we had when we first started living together came back. But the fact of what happened cannot be undone. Now, my husband and I are living a happy life, while my sister-in-law is trembling with fear and turning pale. I will strive to live without relying too much on someone's affection, and to avoid hurting important people with my own hands.